Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, please hit that sub button and join the family. We're so close to 30,000 subs, and you can make that possible. Smash that like button if you enjoyed today's stories.
I met Jess at a used bookstore, of all places. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. My friend bailed on lunch, and I figured I'd kill time. She was sitting on the floor in the psychology section, flipping through some old textbook like she was actually reading it for fun. I made some dumb comment about Freud, and she laughed way too hard, like I was the funniest guy alive. We ended up getting coffee, then dinner. Then somehow I woke up the next morning with her curled up next to me like we'd been doing this for years. It moved fast, way too fast looking back. She started leaving stuff at my place within a week. Toothbrush, hoodie, a whole drawer of random crap. I didn't mind at first. It felt kind of cool, like someone actually wanted to be around me that much. She cooked a lot, she cleaned. She made playlists for my drives and would bring coffee to my job like it was nothing. She was one of those people who really watched you, paid attention. She knew how I took my tea before I even told her. But then it got weird. The first time I noticed something off, we were driving back from this beach trip. She was quiet, just staring out the window, which wasn't like her. Later that night, I got in my car to grab some food and my Bluetooth connected. A voice recording started playing automatically. It was us, from earlier. The exact conversation we had in the car, word for word. I thought maybe she hit record by accident. That happens. I deleted it and didn't bring it up. Didn't want to seem paranoid. But it happened again, and again. Every single time we drove somewhere together, I'd find another voice memo later. Sometimes she labeled them like drive to mom's or post beach talk. I asked her about it once, kind of joking, and she just said she liked listening back so she could catch things she missed. Said it helped her understand me better. Then she smiled like it was the most normal thing in the world. It wasn't just the car rides. I started finding audio files on my laptop too, ones I never recorded. Stuff from inside the apartment, watching movies, ordering food, just being together. Then one day, I opened a random folder on my desktop, and there they were. Videos, not downloaded ones, real ones, of us. In bed, sleeping, even during moments I would never, ever expect to be recorded. I felt sick, not just because of the invasion, but because I had no idea how long it had been happening. How many cameras? How many mics? My apartment's not even that big. I started checking everywhere, lifting picture frames, digging through drawers. I found one. A tiny camera hidden in a fake alarm clock on my nightstand. I confronted her. I didn't yell, I didn't freak out, I just asked why. She didn't deny any of it. She looked me in the eye and said she wanted to study our relationship. Literally said that, like it was a science experiment. She said she needed to see patterns in our behavior. That she was gathering data so we could avoid the usual problems couples have. I tried to explain that it wasn't okay, that people don't do that. She just stared at me like I didn't get it. Like I was a weird one for not appreciating how much effort she was putting into us. That night, I stayed at my brother's. Didn't tell her where I was going. Just packed a bag while she was in the shower and left. She didn't call, didn't text. The silence was worse than any yelling would have been. A few days later, I went back to grab the rest of my stuff. She wasn't home. I tried to be quick, but I made the mistake of checking her laptop. I know I shouldn't have, but curiosity got the better of me. She had a folder with my name on it. Inside were hundreds of files, videos, audio, screenshots of texts, even photos of me when I didn't know she was around. At work. At the gym. One file was a document with bullet points. It read like notes a researcher would take. Stuff like his tone shifts when he talks about his dad, or pauses 3.5 seconds before answering emotional questions. There was also a timeline. A literal timeline of our entire relationship, broken down into stages. What she did. What I said. What worked. What didn't. She had highlighted certain successful techniques and marked areas she needed to improve. I left everything behind. Furniture, kitchen stuff, even my damn TV. Just walked out. Blocked her on everything. Changed my number. Got a new apartment across the city. But here's the thing. It's been months. I don't talk about her. I don't post anything. I keep my life boring and offline. But sometimes, late at night, I get this feeling like someone's still paying attention. Like I'm still being studied. I found things moved in my apartment. Tiny things like my shoes being shifted or the toothpaste cap being put back differently. Nothing you'd notice unless you were really looking. One time I got in my car and my seat was moved, just an inch. I convinced myself I was imagining it. But a week ago I opened my laptop and found a new folder on the desktop. Just one file inside. It was a voice memo. Me, talking to my friend, from a call I made the day before. I hadn't recorded anything. I don't know how she's still doing it. I don't know if she ever really stopped. I met James through a friend who thought we'd get along because we both liked overpriced coffee and hated parties. I wasn't even looking to date anyone. I had just gotten out of a 2-year mess and was enjoying being alone for once. But James was easy to talk to. Not charming in that flashy, try-hard way. Just calm, a little sarcastic, and always acted like he wasn't trying to impress anyone. We hung out a few times, just grabbing food or walking around downtown. It was never fancy. He told me early on he didn't come for money. Said it like a joke, like he'd gotten used to dating women with richer backgrounds. I didn't care. I've never been the type to keep score like that. He worked at a repair shop, fixed laptops and phones mostly, and had a side hustle selling sneakers. Nothing sketchy, just low-key hustle. At first, things were pretty normal. We texted all the time, met up on weekends, and after a while, he started sleeping over. He was one of those guys who actually listened when you talked. Like, fully remembered what you said. I'd mention a show I liked once, and he'd randomly send me a meme about it 3 days later. That kind of thing makes you feel seen, you know. About a month in, he started asking me questions about designer stuff. Not directly, but casually, like what kind of bags I liked, what brands I thought were overrated if I ever resold things. I thought he was just making conversation. I told him the truth. I had a few expensive bags from birthdays and my parents, but I didn't really care about labels that much. Then one day, I noticed one of my bags was gone. A black leather saline that had been sitting in the back of my closet. I assumed I left it at my parents' place or maybe in my car. A week later, another one disappeared. This time it was a tan Balenciaga I'd used maybe twice. Still didn't want to assume anything, so I just kept quiet and started double-checking where I left things. He started showing up in nicer clothes. Nothing flashy. Just subtle stuff, like a Burberry jacket and new sneakers every other week. When I asked about it, he laughed and said his side hustle was finally paying off. He told me he flipped vintage clothes now too, and that designer stuff moved fast online if you knew the right people. Then I found screenshots on his phone. I wasn't snooping, I swear. He asked me to look something up for him while he was in the shower, and a notification popped up. It was an offer from someone on some luxury resale app. The bag in the picture was mine. The listing used photos taken in my bedroom, my mirror, my rug, my damn closet. When I scrolled further, I found more listings. Almost every expensive item I owned had been photographed and put up for sale. Shoes, sunglasses, wallets, even a coat I wore once to a winter party. I didn't confront him right away. I wanted to understand how far it had gone. That night, I checked my apartment top to bottom. I didn't realize how much was missing until I tried to count. Some things I hadn't even noticed were gone. Stuff I didn't use often, like clutches or old jewelry boxes. He wasn't stealing in a smash and grab way. He was doing it slowly over time, only taking what I wouldn't notice right away. The next morning, I asked him straight up about the listings. He didn't even deny it. Said he borrowed a few things because he was in a rough patch and knew I wouldn't miss them. He tried to flip it around, saying most girls would have dumped him already just for not having money, and that I should be proud he found a way to level the playing field. That was the phrase he used, like my closet was some twisted ATM, and he was just balancing the relationship. I told him to leave. He didn't fight it, just gathered his stuff, asked if I wanted the profits back, and left like it was no big deal. I changed the locks the next day. A few weeks later, I started getting messages from buyers. Women asking about authenticity, receipts, even packaging. Stuff I never saw because I didn't list anything. Turns out, James had been using my name on a few accounts. My email, even my photos. He didn't just sell my things, he sold as me. Some people were now demanding refunds, claiming they'd been scammed. I reported it. Went to the police, gave them everything I had. Texts, screenshots, item lists, bank statements. It didn't take it seriously at first. It wasn't like he broke in or threatened me. It was a civil matter, apparently. Took months to even open an investigation. By the time they got around to looking, the accounts were gone. Wiped clean. Sometimes I still get messages from random resale accounts trying to verify listings under my name. Other times, I find my own photos reposted by strangers. That's the worst part, how he turned parts of my life into product images. My bedroom, my outfits, my hands holding things I didn't even know were being photographed. I started keeping all my expensive stuff locked up in a storage unit. I barely even use it anymore. The fun of having something nice is gone. Now it just feels like evidence. I haven't dated anyone seriously since James, not because I'm scared or bitter, but because it made me realize how long someone can watch you, learn your habits, and take from you without you even realizing. It's not the drama you expect. It's slow, quiet, and somehow worse because of that. Last week, I got a DM from a girl I don't know. She said she'd been dating a guy named James who worked at a repair shop. She found my name in his browser history and thought she should reach out. She asked me one question. Had I ever noticed anything missing? I didn't even like Mark at first. He was too intense, too serious, the kind of guy who stared a little too long during conversations. He wasn't creepy on the surface. He was just kind of off. He talked slow, thought about everything before he said it, and always made weird eye contact like he was trying to memorize your soul or something. But everyone else liked him. He had that quiet, mysterious vibe that made people think he was deep. We met through a mutual friend at this backyard party. I was half drunk, wearing an old hoodie, and not in the mood to socialize. But he walked up to me like he already knew who I was. Asked me about a book I mentioned 3 years ago in a random tweet. Said he liked that I didn't post selfies. I should have been weirded out then, but I guess I was just flattered that someone actually paid attention. We started talking after that night. Messaging turned into calls, then dates, then weekend hangouts. He was smart, weirdly smart. He knew a lot about obscure things, minerals, ancient tools, weird historical rituals. And he was artistic too. Made his own jewelry, little sculptures, carved stuff out of wood. He gave me a bracelet made out of resin and dried flowers after a few weeks of dating. I thought it was sweet. Thought maybe I was just being judgy and he was one of those creative introverts that take time to open up. He never made a move too soon. Never pushed anything. Always respected boundaries. That's what made it even weirder when things slowly started feeling controlled. He'd ask really specific questions, like what kind of shampoo I used, what kind of toothpaste, whether I wore socks to bed. It wasn't small talk. He said he just liked knowing people completely. I didn't see it as a red flag, just figured he was quirky. Then he started giving me gifts that were a little too personal. A lock of my own hair pressed in resin. A ring that he said matched my birthstone and energy. A framed photo of me that I don't remember him ever taking. He said it was from a picnic we went on, but the background didn't match anything I remembered. I tried to laugh it off. The thing that really got me was the necklace. He came over one night wearing it. A pendant hanging from a black cord, with this dark red swirl inside a clear resin drop. At first I thought it was dyed flower petals or something. I asked what it was, and he said it was me. My blood, to be exact. I laughed because I thought he was joking, obviously. Then he told me he used my period blood. From my menstrual cup. He said it like it was some romantic gesture. That it was part of me, and now he could carry it with him. He was proud of it, like he created something sacred. I froze. I didn't even know how to respond. I asked him how he got it, and he casually said he'd taken it when I left it in the bathroom one time. Said he cleaned the cup and everything that I never even noticed it was gone. That part scared me the most. I hadn't noticed. I just assumed I'd dumped it and forgot. He didn't get why I was upset. Said it wasn't like he hurt me. That it was a gift, and most people don't understand the depth of real intimacy. I felt sick. I couldn't even look at the necklace anymore. I made up some excuse and asked him to leave. He left without arguing, but before he walked out, he said he made more than one. I locked the door behind him and just sat on the couch trying to process what the hell had just happened. The idea of him going into the bathroom and taking my menstrual cup, something that personal, without me knowing, and then using it to make jewelry like it was some love token, that went way beyond creepy. I texted him the next day saying I needed space. He didn't reply for 2 days, then sent this long message about how he was misunderstood, and how the world wasn't made for people who felt things deeply. He said most relationships were shallow, and he thought I was different. He didn't say sorry, not once. I blocked him after that. A few days later, I got a message from a fake-looking account on Instagram. No profile pic, no posts, just a DM with a photo of the necklace and a heart emoji. Then another account did the same thing. Then a third. All different usernames, same kind of messages. I started to think he was sending them from burner accounts, like he wanted me to know he still had those things, like it was supposed to mean something. I got scared he'd show up again. I started double-checking my locks, keeping the curtains closed, being weirdly jumpy whenever I heard footsteps outside. I don't know if he was still watching me or if he just wanted me to think he was. Either way, it worked. Eventually, the messages stopped. No more fake accounts. No more weird gifts. It's like he just vanished. I never filed a report or anything because technically he didn't steal anything. I couldn't prove the blood thing, and trying to explain that to someone, that your ex made a necklace out of your period blood, would make me sound insane. I told a close friend about it once and even she didn't know what to say. She just kept asking if I was sure. I had imagined it, but I didn't. I saw the necklace. I saw the color. I remember the way he looked at it, like it was some masterpiece. Now I check everything twice. My bathroom, my trash, anything personal. It's weird how fast someone can make you paranoid about stuff you used to not even think about. I still wonder if he kept the other ones he said he made, or if he gave them to someone else, or worse, if he's still making more. I met Brenda on a random Thursday night when I was out with coworkers. It was one of those after-work happy hour things that I didn't even want to go to, but ended up tagging along just to not look antisocial. She was sitting 2 stools down at the bar, flipping through her phone, sipping something bright red. She had this calm, kind of spaced-out vibe that made you look twice. I remember thinking she looked like the kind of person who never had to try too hard to be noticed. We started talking when someone knocked over a drink, and it splashed on both of us. She laughed. I offered her some napkins, and somehow we ended up sitting next to each other for the rest of the night. We talked about random stuff, music, weird jobs, how much we hated small talk. It felt easy, natural. She gave me her number before I even asked. We started seeing each other pretty quickly. The first couple weeks were great. She was funny in a dry way, always had weird little facts about random stuff, and she never made a big deal out of things. She wasn't clingy or pushy, which I liked. She'd show up to my place with snacks and just hang out on the couch like she lived there. At some point, she did start staying over more. She'd bring a small overnight bag, then a few outfits, and her phone charger just magically became a permanent fixture on my nightstand. I didn't think too much of it. I liked having her around. I work long hours and don't have much of a social life outside of work, so having someone to come home to felt new in a good way. Things started to feel off maybe a month in. It was little stuff at first, like how she always seemed to be forgetting her wallet. Not every time, but enough that I noticed. She'd say she left it in her other bag or her car, and I didn't really mind covering a dinner or two. I figured it would even out eventually. One weekend, I let her borrow my car to run some errands. She said she wanted to grab a few things before coming back over, and I didn't really think twice about it. When she came back, she handed me my keys like nothing happened. Later, I realized one of the glove compartment folders was open. It wasn't like that before. I had my credit card bills and random paperwork in there, stuff I hadn't filed yet. I didn't notice anything missing, but something about it bugged me. I just didn't want to seem paranoid. 2 weeks later, I got a fraud alert from my bank. Not a big one, just a message about a high charge that didn't look like my usual spending. When I checked, it was for a boutique clothing store I'd never heard of. I reported it, canceled the card, and didn't even connect it to her. Then another card got maxed out. Same thing. Weird charges. Online stores, subscription services I didn't use, food delivery orders to addresses that weren't mine. I called the bank, filed a claim, got another replacement. Still didn't connect it. I thought maybe my info had leaked online or something. I bought dumb stuff off sketchy sites before. The breaking point came when I got a call from the fraud department. They asked if I had made a purchase for a luxury watch. $5,000. I laughed, said no, and froze when they read the delivery address. It was mine. Not my billing address, my actual apartment. It was already out for delivery. I checked my account again. There were dozens of charges I hadn't seen before. Not just one card, all of them. She hadn't just used one. She used 3. 2 credit, 1 debit, and they were all max or close to it. Somehow she'd gotten access to my passwords. I still don't know how. maybe from my phone, maybe from my laptop when I left it open. I don't even remember letting her near that stuff, but I must have. I confronted her that night. She was at my place watching TV like nothing had happened. I told her everything, the charges, the accounts, the shipping addresses. She didn't freak out. She didn't yell or cry or deny it. She just said, I was going to pay it all back. Like that made it okay. She said she only took what she thought I wouldn't notice, that I seemed comfortable, and she figured I wouldn't miss a few thousand. She said she had been in a rough spot and thought I'd understand. That's the word she kept using, understand. I told her to leave. Right then, she didn't argue. She grabbed her bag and left like it was just another night. No fight, no drama. I reported her, canceled everything, froze my credit, filed a police report. The thing is, unless I could prove she took the cards without permission, it was hard to press charges. I had no cameras, no proof of her using my info. I didn't see her physically take the cards. And since she had been in my apartment all the time, it was technically accessible. My bank helped reverse some of the charges, but not all of them. I was stuck paying off the rest, thousands of dollars. The watch, a couple subscription scams, multiple food delivery accounts, some weird makeup brand I'd never heard of. I haven't heard from her since. She blocked me on everything, changed her number, deleted the social media I knew about, like she just vanished. A month ago, a guy messaged me on Facebook. He said he'd been dating someone named Brenda who looked a lot like the photos I still had. She stayed with him for a bit. Then his account started acting up too. He figured something was wrong when his bank locked his card at a gas station 3 towns over while he was still at work. He asked me what I did about it. I told him the truth. Not much. Because by the time you realize it, she's already gone. I should have trusted my gut that night, but I didn't. I let her talk me into it. Helen invited me to this party one Saturday. Said it was just a chill get-together of people she's known forever. Backyard type thing, music, drinks, nothing formal. At the time, we'd only been dating for like a month, and things were going okay. She was outgoing, loud in a fun way, always knew what to say in a room. Me, not so much. I tend to hang back and observe, so I figured maybe it'd be good to meet her friends, get a little out of my bubble. We pulled up to this big house out near the edge of town. Looked like it belonged to someone older with money, but everyone there seemed pretty young. I stepped out and instantly noticed how loud the music was and how the whole place was glowing from those cheap outdoor string lights. People were everywhere, on the porch and the grass by the pool. It looked fun at first, just one of those nights that felt like it'd be easy to get lost in. The second we walked in, people lit up when they saw her, like not just a friendly wave or a smile. They rushed over. Guys mostly, and they weren't just hugging her. They were holding her. Long, slow, hand on lower back kind of hugs. One guy literally picked her up. Another kissed her on the neck. They called her baby. One of them grabbed her face with both hands and rubbed noses with her like they were about to make out. She just laughed and swatted him away like it was nothing. I stood there with this frozen smile like, okay, maybe this is just how they are. Maybe she had a wild past, and I'm the new guy who's got to roll with it. She finally introduced me, but not really in a this is my boyfriend way. More like, oh yeah, this is my friend I was telling you about, friend. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't want to look insecure or jealous or whatever. But inside, my chest felt tight. Every time I turned around, some new guy had his hands on her, grabbing her wrist, tugging at her shirt, touching her hair. One dude smacked her butt when she passed, and she didn't even flinch. I looked at her and she just smiled and shrugged like that's normal. She kept saying stuff like, they're just like that, or they're all harmless. But it didn't look harmless. It looked like every guy there thought they had some sort of claim on her. I kept trying to stick close, thinking maybe it'd settle down once they realized we were together. It didn't. If anything, it got worse. One guy offered her his drink, and she sipped from it without asking what was in it. She leaned on another guy's shoulder while they laughed at something I wasn't included in. Some guy came up behind her and slid his hands around her waist while she was talking to me. She didn't even move away. I asked her quietly if we could step out for a second. She acted confused, like she didn't get what the issue was. Said I was overreacting, that I should loosen up, and that she'd always been touchy with her friends. Then she laughed and told me I was cute, my gal, serious. Like I was the one being weird. I stayed another hour, mostly because I didn't know how to leave without making a scene. I barely talked to anyone. Most of the people there didn't even acknowledge me unless I was standing directly next to Helen. They asked how we met or what I did for work, and then turned back to her like I was just a background prop. At one point, I walked in on her sitting on some guy's lap. She had her arm around his neck and was whispering something in his ear. When she saw me, she got up and acted like she'd just been messing around, said he was like a brother. But the way he looked at me, that wasn't a brother. I left without telling her. I just walked out the back gate, called a ride share, and went home. She texted me that night saying I was being dramatic, said if I couldn't handle her past and her friendships, and maybe I wasn't ready for someone like her. She made it sound like I was insecure, like I was trying to control her. But that wasn't it. I don't care if someone has history. We all do. But there's a difference between having friends and being in the middle of some weird, blurred line mess where every guy thinks he owns a piece of you. After that night, I couldn't look at her the same way. Every time I thought about her, I pictured that guy's hands on her waist, or her laughing while another dude kissed her cheek, or that smug look the guy gave me from the couch, like he knew he had something over me. We lasted maybe another week. She kept acting like I was too sensitive, too boring, too inside my own head. I ended it over text because I didn't want to see her again. Didn't want her touching my face or laughing in that fake sweet way she did when she was trying to get what she wanted. The worst part wasn't the party. It was realizing that I didn't know her at all. That for a whole month I thought we were building something. But to her, I was just one more guy in a rotation of attention. One more name she could toss out at her parties. She probably took someone else to the next one. Probably introduced in the same way. Probably said the same things. Maybe he stuck around longer than I did. Maybe he didn't mind being surrounded by guys who couldn't keep their hands off her. But me, I'm out. I'd rather be alone than sit on the sidelines while someone turns my relationship into a public game. I met Ethan through a group chat for mutual friends. It started casual. He was funny, always sending memes or cracking jokes, and we clicked fast. He wasn't trying too hard, and that's what I liked. Most people these days come off like they're performing for attention, but he just felt real. At least, that's what I thought back then. After we started talking one-on-one, things moved kinda quick. We started hanging out every other day, and before I even realized what was happening, I was letting him stay at my place more than he was at his own. He said he had issues with his roommates, said one of them kept stealing his laundry and another played loud music all night. I didn't question it. He didn't seem like someone who lied about dumb stuff. At first, I was happy. He was sweet in those early weeks. Always texting good morning, bringing random snacks I liked, doing dumb little impressions to make me laugh. He felt like someone I could actually build with. But then came the stuff about his grandma. He brought her up in passing like he didn't want to talk about it too much. Said she was really sick and didn't have long. That she raised him when his mom was in and out of the picture, and that she was the only family he really had. He got emotional sometimes when he mentioned her, and he didn't like showing that side. I remember once he teared up and left the room mid-sentence. That kind of thing makes you feel for someone. A few weeks later, he told me she was about to get kicked out of her assisted living place. He said the place was draining her savings, and the only option was to move her into a home of her own, where she could be comfortable and still get care. He didn't ask me right away, but he brought it up a few times, like he was working up to something. Eventually, he said he wanted to buy her a small house. Nothing fancy, just somewhere she could stay in peace, but his credit was wrecked. He said it straight up embarrassed him to ask, but he needed help. He said he would pay it all back in monthly payments, that he had money tied up in an old lawsuit and would be getting a decent settlement within a few months. I hesitated. Of course I did. Who wouldn't? But the way he talked about her, and the way he looked at me when he asked, like I was the only person in the world who could help him, it got to me. He even showed me photos of her, talked about how she used to make cookies with him when he was a kid. I felt I'd be heartless if I said no. So I did it. We found a house through a private seller that was cheaper than anything listed online. Ethan said he knew the guy and could get it for a good price if we didn't go through agents. The money came from my savings and a personal loan I took out under my name. I signed the paperwork. I even put the property in my name because he said it'd make it easier to refinance later and pay me back. Once the sale went through, something shifted. He wasn't as present. Started spending more time out. Stopped staying over as much. Said he was busy setting things up for his grandma to move in. He took me by the house once, and there was barely anything inside, just some old furniture and a mattress on the floor. He said the nursing stuff was coming next week. Weeks passed, no mention of his grandma moving in. Every time I asked, he had some excuse. She had a bad fall, needed to stay at the hospital a bit longer. He was dealing with her paperwork. Her nurse bailed last minute. It all sounded legit, just messy and stressful. Then one of my friends who lives near that part of town texted me a photo of the house. Ethan was on the porch, shirtless, drinking with some people I'd never seen. She said she thought he was throwing a party. I told her that couldn't be right. His grandma was supposed to be moving in. I drove over there later that night and parked a few houses down. Waited. Sure enough, the lights were on, music was playing, and Ethan walked out with two girls, both laughing and grabbing at his arm. I felt sick. I didn't even confront him. I just drove home, locked the door, and sat in the dark trying to make sense of it. The next day, I called one of the neighbors pretending to be a relative. I asked if an older woman had moved in recently. She said no, just some young guy who came and went with different people every few days. No one elderly had ever been there. I texted Ethan asking to talk in person. He gave me the runaround, kept saying he was busy, that his grandma was having a rough week. When I pressed harder, he finally stopped responding. Just like that. Coasted. A few days later, I went back to the house. No one answered the door, but I peeked through the window. The inside looked like a crash pad, random clothes, beer cans, blankets tossed on the floor. Not a single thing that suggested an old woman lived there. No medical supplies, no family photos, nothing. I went to the police to ask what I could do. They said technically no crime had been committed. The house was in my name. I gave him the money willingly. There was no signed agreement, no written contract. I could try to get him evicted, but that process would take time and cost more money. So that was it. I was stuck with a house I didn't want, a loan I couldn't afford, and a guy who vanished like smoke. It's been months now. I never heard from him again. Every once in a while, I'll check his socials, but they're all private or deactivated. I don't even think he used his real last name with me. Sometimes I still drive by that house. It's not even that far. I see different cars parked outside now. Once I saw someone moving a speaker in through the back. I don't know if Ethan still lives there or if he flipped it to someone else under the table. All I know is his grandma was never real. And if she was, she never needed that house. That whole story was just a mask, and I fell for it. You know when you meet someone and everything just seems cool at first. That's how it started with Kelly. I wasn't really looking for anything serious, but she came around, and honestly, she was fun to be with. We had this weird, chill vibe where nothing felt forced. She was kind of goofy, a little messy, but in a way that didn't bother me much. Until, well, things took a turn I never saw coming. So, here's the thing about Kelly. She had this hygiene thing with her period that was different. She didn't do pads or tampons at all. She told me it was just easier to free flow, and I didn't really get it at first. I mean, I didn't ask a million questions. It was just one of those things you don't want to bring up because it sounds weird, right? You know, everyone's got their habits. But with Kelly, it was more than just a habit. We'd been dating a few months, and I was still in that this is working phase. My place was a little messy sometimes, and she wasn't the cleanest either, but I didn't care too much. Then one day, I got this brand new, super expensive sofa. I'm talking top of the line, leather, the kind you find in fancy stores that cost way more than they should. I saved up for it because I figured if I'm gonna have a place to chill, I want it to look good. Kelly was excited too, said it looked cool and perfect for movie nights. Things were normal until one weekend she stayed over. I knew her period was coming up, but she didn't bring anything with her, no pads, no tampons, nothing. I didn't think much of it at the time. We hung out, watched some shows, and she crashed on the sofa like always. Next morning, I went to grab my phone from the couch, and that's when I noticed it. A dark stain, kind of dry but still noticeable, right in the middle of the leather. At first, I freaked out. I didn't even know what it was at first, just that it was disgusting and ruining my brand new sofa. I asked her about it, trying to be calm, but she just shrugged and said it happens. She told me again she just free flows and sometimes things get messy. She didn't seem embarrassed or upset, just like it was no big deal. But for me, it was huge. This was my space, my money. That sofa was supposed to be the centerpiece of the apartment, and now it looked like someone had spilled a bottle of blood on it. Cleaning it was a nightmare. I tried everything. Special leather cleaners, scrubbing it, even rented a steam cleaner. But nothing worked. The stain just sunk in deeper. What made it worse was how Kelly acted like it was totally normal. She would just sit there, sometimes stretching out on the couch without a care. No pads, no protection, nothing. I started noticing the smell sometimes too, like a faint metallic kind of smell that I'd never associated with a couch before. And yeah, it grossed me out more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just the stain. It was the way she didn't seem to care about basic hygiene. I thought maybe it was just the period thing, but no. She would leave dishes piled up, clothes on the floor, and half the time the bathroom smelled like she hadn't cleaned it in days. I tried to drop hints, but she either ignored me or got defensive. One night, after a couple of drinks, she confessed she didn't like pads or tampons because they felt uncomfortable. She said free-flowing made her feel more natural and connected or some crap like that. I didn't argue. Honestly, I just nodded and pretended to understand. But inside, I was cringing. I thought maybe this was just something weird she dealt with occasionally, but then it became a pattern. I'd come home after work, and the sofa would have more stains or smudges. Sometimes the carpet near the couch looked weird too. It was like she didn't care at all about leaving a mess. Friends who came over noticed it too. One of them actually asked if something had spilled on my couch, and I had to explain without sounding like a total creep. I felt embarrassed, like my home wasn't a place to hang out anymore. One weekend, I tried talking to her seriously about it, hoping she'd at least use some kind of protection or a blanket on the couch or something. She said she didn't want to change. Said it was her body and she'd do what she wanted. That was the moment I realized this wasn't gonna be a small thing I could fix. I started avoiding having her over, even though she kept pushing. I caught her once trying to sneak into my apartment after I told her no, and that felt wrong. The whole vibe shifted from fun to awkward and stressful. The last straw was when the landlord came by for an inspection. He noticed the stains and smelled a weird odor and asked me if I had pets or if anyone was smoking inside. I just shrugged and said no, hoping he wouldn't look too close. But inside, I was panicking because I knew the couch was toast. After that, I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. I told Kelly we needed to talk. I was upfront about how the couch was ruined and that her hygiene stuff was affecting me more than I thought. She didn't take it well. She said I was being controlling and told me if I couldn't accept her, maybe this wasn't gonna work. That's when I realized it wasn't just about a couch or even hygiene. It was about respect and boundaries, and she wasn't willing to meet me halfway. The fun vibe we had was gone, replaced by this weird tension every time she showed up. So I ended it. After she left, I spent a whole weekend cleaning and trying to salvage what I could. The sofa never looked the same. The stains were permanent, like a reminder of how things spiraled out of control. Now, every time I see a sofa or even think about the smell, I get this weird flashback. I still can't believe something as dumb as a couch ended up being the thing that made me see who she really was. Dating Kelly was like living with a ticking time bomb of awkwardness and gross surprises. I didn't expect a hygiene problem to turn into a nightmare that ruined my place and made me question everything about what I was okay with. So yeah, that's the story. Kelly and her free flow period ruined my expensive sofa and pretty much messed up what could have been a chill relationship. I guess some things just aren't meant to mix. Right then, here it goes. I met this guy, Parker, through one of those dating apps. At first, it was just the usual stuff. Swiping, chatting, kind of feeling each other out. You know how it goes. I wasn't expecting much, honestly. I'd been on a bunch of dates that ranged from boring to downright awkward. But Parker, he was different. Not in some over-the-top way, just normal. He was awkward too, but in a way that felt real, like he wasn't trying too hard to be cool or funny. I guess that's what made me want to meet him in person. Our first few dates were pretty chill. Coffee at this tiny hole in the wall place that served way too much sugar in their lattes. Then a walk through this park with those massive oak trees that filter sunlight in the afternoon. We didn't do anything wild, no big fancy dinners, no crazy nights out, just easy stuff. We joked about dumb things, shared a couple of stories, and I liked that it felt comfortable. No weird vibes, no sketchy moments. Just two people hanging out and trying to see if there was something there. Then, out of nowhere, Parker disappeared. Like, totally vanished. No warning, no message saying he was busy or whatever. One day, he was texting me about plans for the next weekend. Then suddenly, nothing. No calls, no replies. It was like he dropped off the face of the earth. At first, I thought maybe something came up or he changed his mind. People ghost all the time, right? So I tried to move on. But then things started getting really weird. About 3 weeks after he stopped talking, I got a random text from a number I didn't recognize. Just a simple, hey, no name or anything to identify them. I figured it was a wrong number or some spam, so I ignored it. But then more messages came, always vague and short. No clear conversation, just little nudges like someone trying to get my attention but not wanting to say who they were. I blocked a number and then another one popped up. It felt like whoever was texting me was playing some kind of game. One day at work, I was managing this small bookstore, a place I love, quiet and cozy, and I noticed someone hanging around outside. At first, I thought it was just a customer who wasn't sure if they wanted to come in, but this person didn't move or look like they planned to enter. It just stood near the window watching. I got this weird sinking feeling, the kind that tightens your chest and makes your skin crawl. I tried to peek through the blinds, but when I looked back, they were gone. From then on, things started to feel off in my everyday life. My front door was sometimes unlocked when I was sure I locked it before leaving. Small things on my desk at work shifted, like someone had been there. I hear footsteps in the hall when no one else was supposed to be home. One time, I found a crumpled piece of paper stuffed in my mailbox. It had my name scrawled on it, but nothing else. No words, no clues, just my name. It freaked me out more than I wanted to admit. I told a couple of my friends about the strange stuff, hoping maybe it was just me overthinking. They joked that maybe I had a secret admirer or that I was becoming paranoid. But honestly, it wasn't funny to me. It was exhausting to constantly feel like I was being watched or followed. I started locking all my doors twice, installing a cheap security camera outside my place, and always checking over my shoulder. Then came the day I thought I actually saw Parker again. I was walking home from work. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows over the sidewalk. I glanced across the street, and there he was, or at least someone who looked exactly like him. The way this guy stood, the tilt of his head, the way he held his hands in his pockets, it was too familiar. I didn't stop or call out. I just crossed the street and kept walking, heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. That moment kicked me into overdrive. I started digging online, trying to find any trace of him or anyone else who'd met him. Turns out, I wasn't the first. I found stories from other people in different cities. Women who said he met them online, showed the same sweet but awkward charm, then disappeared without explanation. A few mentioned weird texts or someone watching them after he ghosted. It was like a pattern, and the more I read, the more I realized this wasn't just some bad breakup or a flaky guy. The dates, the laughs, the conversations, they all started feeling like part of some twisted setup. Like he wasn't just trying to date me, but wanted something else all along. The idea that he'd been lurking around, watching me without me knowing, made me feel gross and scared all at once. Sleep was impossible. Every little noise in my apartment made me jump. My phone became a source of anxiety because messages kept coming from new numbers, always short, always vague, always making me feel like he was still out there, still paying attention. I changed my number, stopped going out alone, and even avoided places I used to like. One night, the security camera finally caught something. Grainy footage, but there was a figure standing near my window. The way they moved, the height, even the silhouette, it was him. That was the moment I decided to call the cops. They took the report, listened politely, but basically told me it would be hard to catch someone who knew how to hide and vanish at will. Now I live in this strange kind of half-constant alertness, waiting for the next weird message, the next time I'll see that shadow in the corner of my vision. It's like Parker never really left. Maybe he never intended to. I don't know what he wanted from me or why I was the one he targeted, but I've learned that sometimes when someone disappears, it's not an ending. It's just the start of something else you never asked for. So I met this girl, Mary, on Tinder. It wasn't like a random swipe. Something about her profile just caught my attention. The photos weren't super filtered, which was refreshing, and her bio was weirdly funny but chill. We started chatting, and it felt easy, like we actually got each other. You know how rare that can be with online dating. She was smart, had jokes, and the way she typed made it feel like we'd been friends forever, not just some online match. We went out a couple of times, and it felt real, like for once it wasn't awkward or forced. She was exactly like her profile, funny, laid back, and honestly, kind of mysterious in a good way. But here's the weird part. Every time I tried to find her on Tinder after our first week, her profile would just disappear, like poof. I'd search her name or her username, nothing. It was like she vanished. At first, I thought maybe she deleted the app or changed her profile name. I figured she might not be super into online dating and just wanted to meet in person. But then, every time I try again, her profile was gone. Then, one day, it popped back up under a slightly different name, but the pictures were the same. Same smile, same face. That got me curious. I started paying more attention. I found other profiles that looked like her, but with small differences. Different names, slightly different pictures, maybe a new location even. At first, I thought maybe she had a lot of fake profiles for fun or some weird experiment. But it wasn't just a few. It was like a dozen accounts, all hers, all active. What made it worse was when I dug deeper. I matched with some of these other profiles too. The conversations were always weirdly similar. Same jokes, same little quirks. But the people I was chatting with had no idea about each other. Each Mary seemed to have a totally different life story, different jobs, even different hobbies. At first, I thought maybe it was a scam or some elaborate prank, but nothing about it felt like a classic scam. She didn't ask for money or try to get me to do anything shady. It was just this strange game of juggling all these profiles and people without any of us knowing. And it wasn't just me. Other people started messaging me about Mary. Friends who matched with her or someone who looked exactly like her under another name. They didn't know I was talking to a different version of Mary either. This whole thing started messing with my head. It was like I was stuck in some weird online maze where the same person was behind all these doors, but nobody else was allowed to see it. I wanted to confront her, ask what the hell was going on, but every time I tried to bring it up, the Mary I was talking to would go silent for days, then come back acting like nothing happened. One time I even showed up at one of the places she said she lived just to see if she was real. The address was an old apartment building, and nobody there had ever heard of her. It was like she was a ghost or someone who could slip through the cracks whenever things got too real. I started getting this cold feeling like maybe I didn't really know who she was at all. I started piecing things together. Each profile was tailored for a different crowd. One was super artsy and into indie music. Another was all about fitness and hiking. A different one acted like a chill gamer girl. It was like she was living multiple lives, juggling people like they were characters in some twisted game. And none of it made sense because she wasn't asking for anything, not money, not favors, just attention or control. I didn't know. The worst part was realizing that some of the people she was talking to were really into her, just like I was. They thought they were special, that this Mary was the one. And yet, behind the scenes, she was juggling us all with no one the wiser. I tried blocking all the accounts I found, but new ones popped up like weeds. It was exhausting, confusing, and honestly kind of terrifying. How could someone live like that? How could she keep all those lies straight without cracking? And why bother? At one point, I messaged one of the other profiles pretending to be someone else just to see if she'd slip up. She didn't. She played along perfectly, making sure her stories never overlapped. It was like she had rehearsed a million times. Eventually, I stopped trying to chase her. It was like chasing smoke. You think you caught it, but it slips right through your fingers. I deleted all the profiles I found, deleted Tinder, and told myself to move on. But here's the thing, sometimes weeks later, I'd get a message from an unknown number. It'd be something small like, hey, or a random emoji, nothing really threatening, but enough to remind me she was still out there, juggling whatever lives she wanted. It was like a ghost that didn't want to be caught, or maybe just didn't want to be real. And honestly, I still don't know what to make of it. Did she have some kind of control issue? Was it a game? Or was it something darker, like she was using all these fake lives to avoid something real? Whatever it was, Mary disappeared again. Not just from Tinder, but from my life. And I'm pretty sure she's out there somewhere, managing more accounts, more people, probably spinning the same what I got caught in. I guess the worst part wasn't that she vanished, but that none of us ever really knew who she was, or even if she was real. I always thought I was pretty chill about dating, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened with Eddie. At first, he seemed normal, like the kind of guy who keeps his life low-key, doesn't overshare, just easygoing. When he invited me over to his place for the first time, I figured he lived alone. The apartment was small but neat, nothing fancy, but definitely his own space. No signs of anyone else living there, just some books, records, and a couple of plants on the windowsill. We started seeing each other more often. Drinks, movies, the usual stuff. I liked the quiet vibe of his place, and I liked Eddie, or at least what I thought I knew about him. He wasn't one of those loud, dramatic types. I felt comfortable around him, like I could just be me. But then one night, everything shifted, and the calm broke in the weirdest way. It was around midnight when I heard it. A noise. At first, I thought maybe it was just the building settling or a car outside. But then it came again, like a door creaking open and muffled voices. I froze, trying to listen more closely. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the apartment. I texted Eddie, thinking he might be on the phone or something, but no answer. I knocked lightly on his bedroom door, and when there was no reply, I figured I'd just check the living room. That's when I saw it. A pair of shoes by the door, not Eddie's. Different style, way too neat and polished for his usual look. I didn't say anything right away, but my gut was already screaming that something was off. When Eddie finally came out, I casually asked if he had a roommate or someone staying over. He brushed it off, said no, that it was probably just a visitor earlier, but the shoes stayed there like a quiet proof of a secret he wasn't ready to share. After that night, things got weird. I started noticing little things, like hearing voices through the walls when I was at his place, or catching glimpses of shadows moving behind the curtains. I asked Eddie again, and each time he insisted he lived alone. But the noises didn't stop. It was like there was someone else living there, but hidden, like a ghost that wasn't supposed to exist. One night, I stayed late after we hung out. Eddie had fallen asleep on the couch, and I was scrolling through my phone when I heard it again. Footsteps, quiet but definite. I got up, tried to be as quiet as possible, and followed the sound to his bedroom door. It was slightly ajar, and I pushed it open just enough to peek inside. What I saw made my stomach drop. There was a woman sitting in the corner, her face shadowed but her eyes burning with his cold hate. She wasn't supposed to be there. Eddie's face went pale when he woke up and saw me. The woman didn't say a word, just stared at me like I was some enemy who had invaded her territory. That was when Eddie spilled the truth. He lived with his sister who hated me. She didn't like anyone he dated. She'd been there all along, hiding behind closed doors, making noises to scare me off. She was jealous or possessive, I don't know exactly. But she made it clear she wanted me gone. That was a problem she wouldn't let slide. Things went downhill fast after that. Messages started showing up on my phone from unknown numbers, saying stuff like I should stay away or things would get worse. One day, I found the tires of my car slashed. When I told Eddie, he seemed genuinely shocked, but I couldn't shake the feeling he wasn't telling me everything. His sister started showing up unexpectedly, always when I was there. Once, she blocked the door and said she didn't want me around. Eddie looked torn, caught between her and me, but he never stood up to her. It was like she had some kind of control over him that I couldn't break. The apartment wasn't the safe place it used to be. I was constantly on edge, watching for signs she might be there, hearing whispers through the walls, catching glimpses of her in reflections or out of the corner of my eye. It felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare, trapped in a space that wasn't really mine. At one point, I tried talking to Eddie about moving out or finding somewhere just for us, but he made excuses. Said it wasn't that simple, that his sister needed him. I couldn't figure out if he was scared of her or if there was something deeper going on. One night, I found a note slipped under the door, written in shaky handwriting, telling me to stay away or else. No signature, but I knew who it was from. That was the last straw. I told Eddie I couldn't do this anymore. The constant fear, the lurking threats, the feeling that I was never really welcome. He looked defeated, like he wanted to fight but didn't have the strength. I packed my things and left that night, knowing I couldn't go back to a place where the person I cared about wasn't really free to be with me. I still don't know what really went on between Eddie and his sister. That she had always been there, watching, waiting to tear us apart, or if something broke between them that I wasn't supposed to see. All I know is that sometimes, the people you think you know the best are hiding shadows you never saw coming. And when those shadows come for you, there's no easy way out. You think you know someone, right? Like you meet this girl, Lydia, and everything seems chill at first. Nothing flashy, just normal stuff. Talking, hanging out, sharing dumb jokes, maybe swapping a few pictures here and there. You don't expect that the person you're trusting with your private moments is gonna turn all of that into something ugly that wrecks your life. But yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. So I met Lydia at this coffee shop one afternoon. It wasn't some fancy place or anything, just a corner spot with cheap lats and mismatched chairs. I liked that she wasn't trying too hard to impress me or put on a front. She was easy to talk to, the kind of person who laughs at your lame jokes and actually listens when you talk. It wasn't long before I felt comfortable enough to start opening up to her, telling her stuff I usually keep to myself. You know how it goes when you start trusting someone. You let them see those private parts of you that you don't share with everyone. I sent her some pictures, shared texts and stories, thinking it was safe because, well, why wouldn't it be? I didn't think twice about it. But here's where things started to go sideways, and honestly, I still can't believe it. Out of nowhere, I start getting weird messages from friends. At first, it was nothing crazy, just a casual, hey, did you post this? Or saw something weird online about you. I thought maybe someone was messing with me or some dumb joke going around. So I checked my phone and social media, and that's when it hit me like a gut punch. Private pictures I sent Lydia, pictures I never meant for anyone else to see, were all over the internet. I mean, I'm talking about sites I wouldn't even want to say out loud, stuff that no one should ever see. And it wasn't just photos. Some texts I thought were private, messages between me and Lydia, were being shown around to people we both knew. Stuff I said when I trusted her was suddenly out there, twisted and used against me like proof that I was some kind of liar or sketchy person. It wasn't like Lydia just shared these things to hurt me out of anger or jealousy. At least not exactly. No, she framed it all like it was some kind of truth she was exposing. She sent those photos and messages to mutual friends and family with notes that made me look bad, like I was dishonest, hiding things, or worse. Slowly, I started losing people I cared about because they didn't know what to believe. And Lydia? She acted like everything was totally normal, like she was doing me a favor by telling it like it is, painting me as the bad guy while playing innocent herself. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just a misunderstanding. Maybe she got mad over something small and just wanted to call me out. But then I noticed the pattern. Every couple of days, something new would pop up online. Just enough to mess with me, but not enough for me to fully defend myself. She had all this power over what people thought about me, and she used it like a weapon. It was sick. What made it even worse was how careful and calculated she was. I caught her going through my phone a few times when she thought I wasn't paying attention, scrolling, looking for something she could twist. When I confronted her about it, she spun it like she was just protecting herself or making sure I wasn't hiding anything. But I knew better. She was collecting ammo to use against me. And the stuff she said behind my back, trying to turn friends and family against me. That's the part that really got under my skin. You don't realize how much damage someone can do just by planting little seeds of doubt. It wasn't about the photos or texts anymore. It was about breaking me down, isolating me so she had total control over the story. Every time I tried to fix it, explaining to people, asking Lydia to stop, it just got worse. She'd post new things, send out more messages, and suddenly everyone was looking at me like I was hiding something or lying. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare with my private life being broadcast like some twisted reality show, and there was no escape. One of the scariest things I found out later was that she created fake accounts online. She'd post those pictures and texts anonymously, acting like some stranger who was exposing me for all the world to see. It was like she wanted me to feel hunted, like there was no way out of this mess she'd made. And she didn't even try to hide it. She seemed to enjoy the power, the control she had over me by destroying my privacy and reputation bit by bit. It all blew up when someone I trusted reached out and told me Lydia was sending them messages accusing me of lying about something serious. She was using my own words against me, twisting everything I said into something ugly. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a dumb fight or a messy breakup. This was her way of owning me, controlling me, making me look like the bad guy so she could have the upper hand. I tried everything. Blocking her on my phone, changing numbers, deleting social media accounts. But the damage was done. Those photos and messages, they were out there forever. The whispers and side eyes followed me everywhere I went. People I barely knew stopped talking to me. Friends who once had my back looked at me differently. Lydia had taken something I gave her, my trust, my privacy, and weaponized it in a way I never thought was possible. Looking back, I think the worst part wasn't even the posts or the texts. It was how powerless I felt, watching it all happen and knowing there was nothing I could do to stop it. Like no matter what I tried, I was always one step behind her game. She knew exactly what to say, how to manipulate the story, and how to make me look like the villain in my own life. So yeah, dating Lydia started out pretty normal. What I didn't expect was how fast it could turn into a total nightmare. Your memories, your moments, your private stuff. It all becomes something twisted and ugly in someone else's hands. If there's one thing I'd want people to know is this: be careful what you share, who you trust. Because some people don't see it as trust. They see it as fuel for their own games. And once that fuel is out there, it's almost impossible to put the fire out. You know when you start dating someone and everything feels just a little off. Like there's this tiny warning bell in your head, but you ignore it because you want to believe they're normal. That was me with Adam. At first, he seemed chill enough. We'd chat online, plan to meet up. But every single time there was some excuse why we couldn't hang out where people usually do. No coffee shops, no bars, no parks. He always had a reason why public spots or even his own place weren't possible. It started with little things. He said his apartment was being fumigated or that his roommates were out of town but might come back early. Then it was stuff like weird work hours or some family issue that made having people over impossible. I thought, okay, maybe his living situation was complicated. I didn't want to push too hard. But what really got me was how, every time we did meet, it was somewhere strange. Not the usual places where you meet someone new, but like sketchy parking lots, run-down corners behind buildings, or even these empty, half-abandoned places that felt way more dangerous than fun. At first, I just thought he was nervous or maybe wanted privacy. That was dumb in hindsight, but when you're just trying to give someone a chance, you convince yourself of stuff like that. The real freak-out moment came when he said I should just come to his place one night. Like, no more weird spots, no excuses. I was kind of surprised but also relieved. I figured this would finally clear everything up. But when I got there, nothing made sense. The address he gave me was this old building in a part of town I barely knew. The entrance looked locked tight, no lights on anywhere. I rang the buzzer and waited. No answer. I checked the mailbox, and the name wasn't his. There wasn't even a sign saying people lived there. I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. I texted and got nothing back. That's when it hit me. He never actually lived there. I started looking closer at all the places we met before. The parking lot near that weird liquor store where the streetlights flickered and cars sped by way too fast. The empty warehouse with broken windows and graffiti everywhere. The dark alley behind some restaurants that smelled like garbage and old grease. Places where anyone could have jumped out, and I'd have had nowhere to run. What made it worse was realizing I had been completely alone in those spots with him. No one around to notice if something went wrong. And I never even thought twice about it because he always said it was safer this way. I dug through some old messages and started piecing together how he kept me off balance. Like, there were moments when he'd send photos that looked like his apartment, but when I compared the details, furniture, windows, even the angle of the light, it was all inconsistent. I realized he'd been faking those pictures, probably from someone else's place or maybe even from the internet. None of it matched the address he gave me. When I tried to ask him about it, he changed the subject or made me feel like I was overthinking things. I guess that's part of the game, but you doubt yourself so much you don't question the weird stuff. After that, I started checking in with friends and even neighbors near the supposed apartment. Nobody had ever seen him there. Some said the place had been empty for months, maybe even years. It felt like I'd been dating a ghost or worse, someone who didn't want me to find out who he really was. The strangest part is that I never felt in danger during our time together, at least not until I realized where those meetings actually were. I kept replaying every hangout, every date, and how isolated and sketchy the spots were. What if something bad had happened? What if I hadn't gotten lucky? There were times I caught glimpses of him acting weird, checking over his shoulder, disappearing for a bit and coming back with stories that didn't line up. I should have just walked away, but something about him kept pulling me back in. Maybe it was the hope that this would get better or that he'd finally trust me enough to be real. But he never did. Instead, the mystery grew thicker. I don't know what his deal was, if he was hiding from someone, running from his past, or just someone who liked playing with people's heads. All I know is I was caught up in a dangerous game without even realizing it. And the fact that I only found out by chance when I tried to see where he actually lived still messes with me. What scares me the most is how easily he fooled me, how he made me think the strange was normal. Now, whenever I walk through certain parts of town or see empty parking lots and dark alleys, I can't help but remember those nights with Adam and wonder what could have happened if I hadn't gotten out what I did. Dating him was like stepping into a horror story where the danger wasn't obvious at first, but was always lurking just beneath the surface. And the worst part, it wasn't some haunted house or creepy monster. It was just a guy who never really showed up where he said he would, making me believe a life that wasn't real. At first, everything seemed normal. Actually, more than normal. She was funny, smart, and honestly, I thought I was lucky. But then the control started creeping in. And not the subtle kind. The full-on, paranoid, possessive kind that eats away at your head every single day. We'd been together a couple of months when it began. Hannah would randomly accuse me of cheating, even though I had zero reason to. I'd be sitting on my couch, scrolling through my phone, and she'd ask if I was texting some girl. Or she'd get all suspicious if I didn't answer her calls immediately. At first, I thought maybe it was just insecurity or stuff from past relationships, so I tried to be patient. I told myself to be understanding, but it felt like walking on eggshells, like everything I did was being watched or judged. The crazy part was how it didn't stop there. She started going through my phone, my social media, even my messages with friends. If I deleted a text or didn't respond fast enough, it was proof I was hiding something. It wasn't just annoying, it was suffocating. Friends started noticing how often she was messaging or calling me, even when we were together. She wanted to know every detail of where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. The weirdest part, I wasn't doing anything wrong, but her suspicion just kept growing. I remember this one time we were at a party with some people I'd known for years. Hannah spent most of the night glued to me, glaring every time I talked to another girl. I was trying to be polite, but she was like a hawk, swooping in every time I smiled at someone else. By the end of the night, I was drained. It wasn't just jealousy. It was like she was trying to trap me in this bubble where nothing could breathe outside of her. What made it even harder was my best friend, Jake. He'd been with me since high school. We shared everything. Him, stupid jokes, problems, girls, you name it. Jake even met Hannah a couple of times, and she seemed cool to him. At least I thought so. But I guess you never really know what people are capable of when you're not looking. One day, after months of this constant paranoia and fights, I started noticing weird things. Hannah was texting late at night, but she'd quickly hide her phone if I came near. She stopped letting me see who she was talking to and made excuses about being stressed or busy. I got this gut feeling that something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I told myself to chill and give her space. Hoped me it was just a rough patch. Then the real nightmare started. I was scrolling through my phone, and I saw a message from a number I didn't recognize, but the way it was written, it felt familiar. It was sweet, casual, almost like it was from someone close. My heart sank when I realized it was from Hannah, but the name saved was different. I tried to ignore it, but the doubt ate me alive. Curiosity took over, and one day I asked Jake if he wanted to hang out. We went to grab some beers, just like old times. But then, Jake started acting weird. He was nervous, avoiding eye contact, and kept checking his phone. My mind started spinning, trying to figure out what was wrong. That's when I caught a glimpse of a text on his screen. A message from Hannah. It wasn't just a friendly text. It was intimate, something only someone close would send. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Jake was my brother in all the ways that mattered. Hannah was the girl I cared about. But the pieces were lining up, and the truth hit me like a brick. They were together behind my back. I started digging more, trying to find proof. I looked through Hannah's social media and found hidden conversations, private snaps, things she never shared with me. It was disgusting the way they'd been playing me. But what cut the deepest was realizing how long it had been going on. Months of me trying to hold a relationship together while she was sneaking around with my best friend. I confronted Jake first. The guy who had been my partner in crime, the one I thought had my back, he didn't deny it. He just looked away, ashamed or maybe relieved it was out in the open. Then came the hardest part, cutting them both out of my life. Hannah's texts stopped coming, but the damage was done. I was left with this mess of betrayal and broken trust that felt impossible to clean. What made it worse was how controlling she had been from the start. The accusations, the constant checking, all of it was probably a way to keep me distracted while she did whatever she wanted. It was like she created this prison made of suspicion so tight I couldn't see what was really happening right under my nose. Looking back, I can't believe I stayed so long. I guess part of me thought it would get better or that I was overreacting. But once the mask dropped, it was clear how toxic it all was. The control, the lies, the betrayal, it wasn't just a bad relationship. It was a nightmare that I was lucky to wake up from. Now, whenever I think about Hannah, it's not about the good times or the moments I thought were real. It's about the way she took something I trusted and crushed it without a second thought. And Jake, well, he wasn't just a friend. He was the part of the story that made everything worse. That's the thing with horror stories like this. Sometimes they don't come from scary places or strangers in the night. Sometimes the worst pain comes from people you let inside your life. People who pretend to love you while stabbing you in the back. And once you see it, there's no unseeing. So yeah, that's what happened with Hannah. A couple of months of control, accusations, and lies that ended with the worst kind of betrayal. It's the kind of story that messes with you, but you have to live through it and move on. Because sometimes the monsters aren't hiding in dark corners. They're sitting next to you all along. You know that awkward moment when you start dating someone new and everything seems cool, but there's this weird vibe because they never talk about anything personal. Like no stories about family, no mention of friends, nothing about their past at all. At first, I figured maybe Zachy was just private or didn't want to overshare. But after a while, that silence started feeling really off. Like who actually has zero talk about their family or people they're close to. Everyone's got something to say, right? Turns out, there was a hell of a reason he was keeping it all shut down. And it got way darker than I ever expected. We met at this little coffee spot that no one really knows about. The kind of place where the baristas remember your name but not your order. Zachy was funny, charming in a low-key way, and he had this calmness that pulled me in. Nothing flashy, just easy. I like that. We hit it off quickly, and hanging out was effortless. But every time I tried to bring up something about where he grew up or who he was close with, he dodged the question or changed the subject. It was like walking into a brick wall. I told myself maybe he had a rough family situation or something he wasn't ready to talk about. Cool, everyone has their baggage, right? But the silence stayed, and it started to gnaw at me. What made it worse was how the usual stuff you expect in a relationship was missing. No photos of family on his phone, no friends tagging him in anything online, no calls or texts from anyone that I could see. I even asked if he wanted to meet some of my friends, and he always had an excuse. Work got crazy or he was tired. That was fine for a while, but after a couple months, it was too much. It's like I was dating a ghost or someone who lived in a bubble. I remember feeling confused and frustrated, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. People are complicated, right? But deep down, I knew something wasn't adding up. One night, I went over to his place for dinner, which was a huge deal because he rarely invited me over. The apartment was weirdly empty, like someone just moved in or cleared everything out for a reason. No pictures, no personal stuff, just basic furniture and some random things that didn't fit together. It didn't feel like a home, more like a waiting room. That night, I noticed his phone kept buzzing with notifications, but every time he got a message, he'd lock the screen fast or shove the phone away. I tried to peek but didn't see anything, just a flash of names I didn't recognize. After dinner, while Zachy was in the kitchen, I got curious and started snooping around. Don't judge, I was suspicious as hell at this point. I found a drawer with some old papers and a bunch of documents that looked official but didn't have his name on them. I pulled out one, and it was a marriage certificate with someone else's name on it, a woman's name I didn't know. My heart started racing. I flipped through more stuff and found photos, pictures of Zachy with 2 kids, laughing and smiling like a family, but that's not the Zachy I knew. He never mentioned any of this, not even once. He had a wife and kids, and here I was thinking he was single. It felt like a punch to the gut, but it got worse. I did what any paranoid person would. I looked up his name online, and stuff started popping up. Old news articles, court records, mugshots even. Turns out, Zachy had been involved in some serious criminal stuff years ago. Violence, robbery, all sorts of things that made my stomach twist. I couldn't believe I had been dating someone who was hiding this whole side of himself. It was like I'd fallen into a trap without even seeing the wires. I kept digging and found out that the wife he was married to had filed for divorce a while back, but he never told me. And the kids? That were with her, obviously. Why would he lie about something so huge? It didn't make sense until I realized he was living this double life, or maybe he wasn't even living at all. I had no idea what version of Zachy I was dating. Was he the guy from the photos and papers, or was he someone else entirely? The whole thing felt like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Things got scarier when I started noticing weird stuff around me. People I didn't know watching me at coffee shops, cars parked outside my apartment that seemed familiar. I wasn't sure if it was paranoia or if Zaki had connections that were keeping tabs on me. I stopped answering his texts because I didn't want to get dragged into whatever mess he was involved in. But even ignoring him didn't stop the unease I felt every time I looked over my shoulder. The whole time I kept wondering how I missed it, how someone could hide so much, family, a secret life, crimes, right under my nose, and still pretend to be this perfect mystery guy. I never saw the red flags, or maybe I just ignored them because I wanted to believe in something real. But reality has a way of biting back hard, and with Zaki, it was brutal. In the end, I cut him off completely, but the fallout stayed with me. Dealing with that kind of deception messes with your head. It's not just about being lied to, it's about losing trust in everything around you. I'm still piecing together what exactly he did and who he really is. Sometimes I wonder if I ever knew him at all, or if he was just a character he made up for me to fall for. Dating him wasn't just a bad story. It was like stepping into a dark hole that I almost couldn't get out of. And the worst part, people like Zaki don't just disappear. They keep moving, hiding, twisting their lives so no one ever finds the truth. You think you're safe because you know someone, but really you might just be the next chapter in their secret life. So yeah, that's what happened with Zaki. The guy who never talked about family or friends wasn't just private. He was hiding a whole other world, one that I wasn't supposed to see. And once I did, there was no going back. I wasn't planning on getting involved with anything weird when I started seeing Brock. Honestly, I just thought he was a chill guy who liked hanging out and having a good time. But right from the start, there was this thing he kept pushing. He wanted me to come to these group events. Not like regular parties, but more like gatherings where everyone was glued to some strange vibe. At first, I thought it was just a friend group or something, but the longer I stuck around, the more it felt like I was part of something way bigger and darker than I ever signed up for. The first time Brock invited me to one of these things, I figured it was casual. A few people sitting around a big living room, some drinks, maybe some games. But it wasn't like that at all. When I showed up, the place was packed with people I didn't know, but they all seemed to know Brock. And more than that, they all acted like they were watching me closely, like I was on display. The vibe was intense, like everyone was playing a role in this twisted scene that I hadn't been briefed on. What freaked me out was how controlled everything felt. Brock wasn't just a guy at this party. He was more like a guide or some kind of leader. The way he moved around, checking in with people, giving subtle nods or signals, it was like he was orchestrating the whole thing. And me. I was just some newcomer, someone to be evaluated or moved around according to their rules. As the night went on, I realized the whole group was obsessed with dating, but not in a normal way. It wasn't about meeting people naturally or just having fun. There were rules, weird rules about who could talk to who could date whom, and how relationships had to be approved by the group. It reminded me of one of those creepy cult movies where every move is planned and personal freedom doesn't exist. Brock kept pulling me aside, telling me I had to meet certain people or work on building connections. But it wasn't about just chatting or hanging out. It was like they were testing me, sizing me up to see if I fit their system. The group had this strange obsession with control, like they wanted to decide who ended up with who, and my role was just to play along, to be a piece on their board. I started noticing how the group's dynamics worked. There were people who seemed to be higher up, watching and judging, and others who were clearly being manipulated or pushed into situations against their will. No one really looked happy. It was like they were trapped in this game, trying to follow rules they never agreed to. Brock, though, he was the one pulling me deeper, telling me it was all about growth and finding the right match, but honestly, it just felt like I was losing myself in something I didn't understand. After a few more of these events, it hit me how bizarre this whole thing was. Brock's friends, or whatever they were, kept tabs on me, like I wasn't allowed to talk to anyone outside the group or even have my own opinions about who I liked. The control wasn't just about dating, it seeped into everything. What I wore, what I posted online, even who I texted. It felt like they had eyes everywhere, and Brock was their eyes for me. One night, after a long event that felt more like a ceremony than a party, I had overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Some of the higher-ups were talking about keeping the players in line, and making sure no one goes rogue. That's when I realized this wasn't just a weird social circle. It was an actual cult-like group that controlled its members through fear and manipulation. And Brock, he wasn't just a participant, he was a recruiter, pushing people like me into their system. The scary part was how smoothly it all worked. People didn't even question it because they were trapped in this loop of approval and judgment. Every time I thought about leaving, Brock would show up with a smile and remind me how important I was to the group, how I had potential to grow and find real happiness. But it was all just talk to keep me hooked. Eventually, I caught Brock messaging people I didn't know, organizing who I was supposed to hang out with, who I wasn't allowed to see anymore. It was like my life wasn't mine anymore. It was being managed by this invisible force I couldn't break free from. The worst part was knowing I was just one pawn in their sick game, a number in their twisted system designed to keep control and power. I started pulling away slowly, pretending to go to events while sneaking out early, cutting off contact with some of the members Brock insisted I meet. But even that was dangerous. The group didn't like loose ends, and the closer I got to freedom, the more Brock and the others seemed to tighten their grip. They sent warnings, subtle but clear, texts that hinted at consequences, messages from people who weren't supposed to know where I lived or what I was doing. In the end, I realized I couldn't trust Brock or anyone in that group. What I thought was just dating turned into being trapped in this nightmare where my choices weren't mine. I was just a piece in their game, a puppet in some cult-like operation that destroyed everything real and natural about getting to know someone. Looking back, the worst part isn't the weird rules or the control. It's how easy it was for them to make me forget who I was and almost believe I needed their approval to find love or happiness. Brock wasn't just my boyfriend. He was the gatekeeper to a dark, twisted world I never wanted to be part of. And once you're in, getting out is a whole other story. I never thought a random knock on my door could mess up my whole life, but that night with Pam, it did exactly that. We'd been dating for a while, everything was chill on the surface. Late night texts, weekend hangouts, the usual couple stuff. Pam seemed normal, the kind of girl you'd tell your friends about without hesitation. But then out of nowhere, this guy shows up at my place late at night, and from that moment, everything I thought I knew just fell apart. It wasn't like one of those casual visits either. The dude was serious, almost intense. He didn't waste time asking to talk to me, he wanted Pam. Said something about things she needed to answer for. I was standing there in my hoodie, completely caught off guard. At first, I thought maybe they knew each other from school or work, and this was just some personal drama. But the way he looked at me told me this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. Something darker was lurking. Pam wasn't home that night, which made the whole thing even weirder. The guy hung around, pacing the sidewalk, making it clear he wasn't just going to walk away. I tried texting Pam, but no reply. The guy wouldn't give me much info either, only dropping vague hints about past mistakes, people she'd hurt, and promises she apparently made that never got kept. It was like I was suddenly on the edge of some hidden world I never knew existed. The next day, Pam finally answered her phone, but instead of being upset about the stranger, she acted like I was overreacting or imagining things. She didn't explain who the guy was or why he was after her. That right there was the first sigh I was in deeper than I thought. She brushed it off and changed the subject, but I could tell something was off. After that night, things shifted fast. I started noticing little things. Pam wouldn't answer certain calls or texts. Sometimes she'd disappear for hours without telling me where she was. When I tried to ask, she'd get defensive, accusing me of not trusting her. It felt like I was stepping on thin ice, not just in our relationship, but in a mess I couldn't even see the full shape of. One afternoon, I went to her place unannounced because I was tired of all the secrets. That's when I found the mailbox stuffed with letters, official-looking envelopes from lawyers and some from people I didn't recognize. There were notes about restraining orders, debts, and some really heavy warnings. It wasn't just some drama with an ex or a simple misunderstanding. Pam was living a life that involved threats and promises she was trying to run away from. I remember this one letter that caught my eye. It mentioned a name I didn't know, some kind of dispute or betrayal that had put her on the radar of people who didn't mess around. The more I read, the more I realized that stranger at my door was just the tip of the iceberg. Pam had been keeping this part of her life hidden, and I was tangled in it without even knowing. That night, the stranger came back. This time, he wasn't just knocking. He was pounding on the door like someone desperate or maybe dangerous. I was terrified but didn't want to let him in. He yelled things about debts and promises broken, demanding Pam pay up or face consequences. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from unknown numbers warning me to stay away or it'd get ugly. I felt like my world was turning upside down, and I had no clue how to make it stop. Pam finally showed up looking exhausted and scared in a way I'd never seen before. She told me she couldn't explain everything yet, that it was complicated and dangerous. But I could tell I was more than just a bystander now. I was involved, whether I liked it or not. Her past was crashing into our present, and I was stuck in the middle of a game I didn't understand. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. Strange people started showing up near my place, and I was being followed sometimes when I went out. Pam stopped answering calls for long stretches, then popped up with vague explanations. The fear and confusion built up so much that I barely recognized my own life anymore. It was like she was a completely different person when no one else was around, and I was just waiting for the next bomb to drop. One night, I found her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter. I wasn't proud of snooping, but I was desperate. The messages I saw were chilling, threats, apologies, and plans that didn't include me. She was dealing with dangerous people, and it was clear she was scared. It wasn't just a few mistakes in the past. There was something bigger, something that had wrapped itself around her life tightly, and now it was dragging me in. I confronted Pam, hoping for some kind of honesty, but she shut down completely. Said she couldn't talk about it, that it wasn't safe. That silence scared me more than anything else. I felt like I was watching a nightmare unfold right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do but wait for the next punch. Eventually, the stranger stopped showing up, but the damage was done. I wasn't the same after that. I kept looking over my shoulder, questioning every moment I spent with Pam. What else was she hiding? Who else was involved? And how far would all of this go? I never got the full story, and honestly, maybe it's better that way. I just know that what started as a casual relationship turned into this dark mess where I was just a pawn in someone else's game. And that stranger at my door, that was just the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I thought moving in with Tin was going to be this awesome step. We'd been dating for a while, and it just made sense. I was done with living alone, and he seemed chill enough. Things started out normal. We split the rent, cooked together sometimes, and watched numb shows on weekends. But after a few months, stuff started getting weird. Like little things I couldn't really explain at first, but looking back, it was a warning sign I totally ignored. At first, I noticed my things would get moved around. Like I'd put my headphones on the nightstand and come back from work to find them in the kitchen or under the couch. Not a big deal, right? Except it happened all the time, and I never saw Tim do it. Then there were noises at night. I'm not talking about normal creaks or anything. These were footsteps in rooms that were supposed to be empty, doors opening and closing softly. It felt like someone else was in the apartment, but every time I checked, it was just me and Tim. One morning, I came home early from work because I forgot my phone charger. The place was empty except for me, but the couch cushions were all messed up like someone had been sleeping there, and there was this weird smell, like cigarettes mixed with something chemical. Tin wasn't answering his phone, which was odd, so I started poking around. Asked him I found the door behind the bookshelf. Yeah, I didn't know there was a hidden door there until that day. It led to this tiny, dim room I'd never seen before, filled with backpacks, random gear, and some old electronics that looked kind of sketchy. I freaked out a bit, but then Tin walked in and laughed it off, saying it was just some old stuff he was holding onto. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, I'd noticed strange cars pulling up outside, and sometimes people would come in through the back door when Tin was supposed to be at work. I started locking the door, but Tim always acted like it was no big deal. Then I caught glimpses of people in the hallway, quick shadows passing by my bedroom window. One night, I woke up because my phone buzzed like crazy. It was a message from some random number saying to stay quiet and don't ask questions. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I texted Tim, but no answer. The next morning I confronted him, but he just acted like it was nothing, like I was being paranoid. Then things got dangerous. I noticed some of my personal stuff disappearing, like my money was missing, and some clothes too. I didn't want to believe Tin was involved, but I started feeling trapped in my own place, like I was just living in a shadow of what used to be. One afternoon I came home and found the apartment door wide open. Inside, there were strangers I'd never seen before. Guys I could tell weren't here for a friendly visit. They were messing with something in the kitchen, moving boxes that I didn't recognize. I froze, but before I could say anything, Tin showed up, furious, telling them to leave. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just dating some guy. I was living with someone who was using my home as a hideout. It hit me hard. Tin wasn't just sneaking strangers in. My apartment was a safe spot for whatever shady things he was involved in. I didn't want to think about what kind of dangerous stuff was going on right under my nose. I felt sick to my stomach every time I thought about all the times I was home alone while these people came and went. I started noticing other weird things, like Tin getting secret calls, rushing out when someone texted him, and sometimes acting paranoid, checking windows and doors obsessively. I wanted out, but I didn't know how to do it without setting something off. It was like I was living in a cage with a guy who was hiding a whole dangerous world behind his smile. One night, the noises were louder than ever, shouting, banging, and someone kicking the door. I was so scared I hid in the closet with my phone, thinking maybe I could call for help. But Tin came home calm as ever and told me to forget it, said it was just business. That's when I realized I didn't know this guy at all. The person I thought I was with was just a front, a mask for some dangerous life I'd accidentally stepped into. I couldn't stay there anymore. I packed my stuff while Tin was out and left without saying goodbye. Looking back, it was one of the scariest decisions I'd ever made, but staying felt even worse. I kept thinking about all the times I was in my own home, completely blind to what was really going on. It's crazy how someone you think you know can have this whole hidden world, using your space like a secret base. I never expected my relationship with Tim to turn into this kind of nightmare, but sometimes the people around you are hiding way more than you could ever imagine. I never thought dating Linda would turn into something so twisted it still messes with my head. When we first met, everything seemed normal. She was funny, smart, and honestly way out of my league. We hang out, talk about random stuff, share music, and for a minute, I thought maybe this was finally something real. Nothing flashy or intense, just easy and fun. But then little things started feeling off. It wasn't like she was hiding huge stuff, but sometimes her phone would buzz, and she'd snap it shut like a secret door slamming shut. Or if she laughed at a message, she'd quickly flip her phone over, like she was hiding something from me. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone deserves some privacy, right? We all have secrets, and maybe she just didn't want to share everything right away. But one night, when she got up to use the bathroom, I accidentally grabbed her phone. Not like I was trying to snoop, it just happened. I was scrolling through her messages when I stumbled on something I wish I hadn't. There was this group chat with a bunch of people I didn't know. The chat was full of pictures and screenshots, but not just any pictures. They were private stuff, really personal stuff of people those people were dating. I scrolled through, and then I saw my own face. Right there, posted like I was some kind of prize or a punchline. The captions were messed up, like they were betting on how long each person would last or who would lose their mind first when they found out. That's when the sickness hit my stomach. This wasn't just some dumb group chat. It was a whole twisted system. They'd meet people, collect all their private info, and then share it like it was a trophy. Linda wasn't just playing along. She was one of the ringleaders. This wasn't a harmless gossip. It was a game, and I was one of the players. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. They weren't just sharing stuff behind people's backs. They were actively trying to mess with their dates. Some members would send anonymous texts just to freak someone out. Others showed up uninvited at places they knew their targets would be. It was about love or connection. It was about control, humiliation, and pure cruelty. And I wasn't alone. There were dozens of people caught in this web, unsuspecting, just like me. Linda was a completely different person when she was in that group. Out in the world, she was charming, funny, and cool, but behind the screens, she was ruthless. She'd post photos and screenshots just to embarrass people, laughing at how everyone freaked out. Sometimes they'd bet on who would break first, who would catch on, who would spiral. It was like a sick sport where people's feelings were the ball. It made me question everything about our time together. Was any of it real, or was it all part of her act to get more dirt on me? The texts, the laughs, even the long late-night talks. Was that all just a way to gather more weapons? I started noticing little things that didn't fit, how she'd suddenly go quiet after texting someone, or how she was always glued to her phone, texting like her life depended on it. One night, I finally tried to bring it up. I told her I knew about the group, but instead of freaking out or denying it, she just smiled. Not a warm smile, of a cold one. The kind that says, I'm in control here, and I'm enjoying every second of this. I left that night feeling trapped, like I was caught in something way bigger than me. This wasn't just some bad breakup or cheating story. It was a twisted game, one that had been going on long before I showed up. They had rules, like making sure none of us figured it out too soon. That was part of the fun. Watching people live their lives in the dark while their secrets got shredded piece by piece. Later, I found out the group actually met up in person sometimes. They had secret gatherings where they laughed over who got played worst, shared stories, and planned their next moves. That was beyond creepy. And knowing Linda was part of that made me feel like I was a joke no one else was laughing at. Trying to get out of it was harder than I thought. Once you're in, they don't just let you walk away. I found myself watching my phone constantly, terrified of what new secret might drop or who else was involved. Paranoia crept in and never really left. I didn't know who to trust. Was it just Linda, or were there others close to me part of this nightmare too? Living with the shadow over me sucked the life out of everything. I had to lie to my friends, pretend I was fine because no one would believe this mess. The worst part, knowing Linda had done this to others before me and probably after me too. This game wasn't some dumb prank. It was cold, calculated, and cruel. It left me broken, like I was nothing but a piece in some sick entertainment nobody warned me about. So yeah, dating Linda started out normal, but I walked right into a trap I couldn't see. The person you think is your partner might just be playing you in a game you didn't even know existed. And the scariest part, you don't get to choose when to play. You're already on the board. I want to tell you about the worst dating nightmare I ever had with a guy named Dom. When we first met, everything seemed normal. Dom was sweet, funny, charming, the kind of person you think you got lucky with. We met through friends, started hanging out, and from the very beginning, he was texting or calling me all the time. But it wasn't that clingy, desperate kind of attention. It felt nice, like he genuinely cared. It didn't take long before I started letting my guard down, thinking maybe this was something real. I mean, who wouldn't want to believe that? But somewhere along the way, things changed. Not a slow fade or anything subtle, but like a switch flipped overnight. Suddenly, Dom wasn't just a part of my life. He wanted to control every single part of it. It started small, almost harmless. I remembered him casually saying things about some of my friends being bad influences, or not really the right crowd for me. At first, I thought he was just looking out for me, trying to be protective. Maybe he was just worried I'd get hurt by someone. But it wasn't just friends. Soon, his control moved on to how I dressed. My clothes became too revealing or inappropriate whenever we went out together. I never thought I'd get told what to wear by someone I was dating, but with Dom, it was clear. If I wanted this relationship to work, I'd listen and change. It felt like he was slowly building this cage around me, brick by brick. Then came the social media stuff. Dom started commenting on every post I made, sometimes sending me messages like, "That picture looks weird," or "Maybe don't post that late at night." It was small at first, little nudges, but those nudges quickly turned into full-on monitoring. I found myself checking my phone way more than usual, anxious about what I could or couldn't post. If I didn't reply to his texts fast enough, the calls would start, nonstop, sometimes in the middle of the night. It was exhausting, and I was starting to feel like I was living under a microscope. The thing is, at the beginning, Dom was so good at making it feel like it was all about me. He'd say things like how much he cared, how protective he was, and how he just wanted what was best for me. But it got worse. The constant check-ins, the questions about where I was, who I was with, what I was doing, it wasn't love. It was control, pure and simple. It felt like he didn't trust me, but he never came right out and said that. Instead, he made me feel like I was a problem for needing space or privacy. I tried to keep some distance, thinking maybe I was overreacting more than it was just a phase, that he'd calm down. But every time I pushed back, Dom would flip. He'd get cold and angry or dramatic in this way that made me feel guilty. He'd say I was breaking his trust or hurting him. The emotional manipulation was exhausting. Eventually, I stopped arguing because it never ended well. I started walking on eggshells, constantly trying to avoid his wrath. The hardest part was when he got into my phone. One day, I'd noticed my messages were marked as read, even though I hadn't opened them. My social media passwords mysteriously changed, locking me out of my own accounts. It was like he had full access. I realized he wasn't just trying to control my outside world. He was inside it, watching everything I did, reading my private conversations, seeing everything before I even did. That was a breaking point for me, but also terrifying because I felt completely exposed. When I finally realized I needed out, that's when the threat started. Dom told me he had stuff on me, secrets I'd shared in private, things I thought only he knew. He said he'd expose it all, send messages and photos to my friends, post online, ruin my reputation. It felt like being trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I wanted to disappear, but every step I took to get away, he was there, waiting to pull me back down. I couldn't tell anyone because I was ashamed. How do you explain that the person you trusted most turned into your worst nightmare? And the craziest part was how easy it was to fall for him in the beginning. I keep replaying those first few weeks when he seemed like the only person who truly cared. Now those memories feel like a cruel trick, like I was set up from the start. Eventually, I found a way to block him, change all my passwords, and start over, but the scars are still there. Dom wasn't just controlling. He made me doubt myself, question my own reality. I learned the hard way how fast a person can switch from being sweet to toxic, and how dangerous it is when control hides behind care. Looking back, I see how he used love and affection as weapons. The late night texts, the concern, the constant need to know where I was, all designed to isolate me from my friends and family, to make me feel like I owed him everything. And when I started slipping away, he turned into a threat, showing how fragile that control really was. That's my story about Dom, a guy who looked like a boyfriend but acted like a cage. It's a nightmare I hope no one else has to live through, but I want people to know how quickly someone can go from being the one who makes you feel safe to the one who makes you feel trapped. If you ever find yourself in a situation where care feels like control or love feels like a cage, trust your gut. Because once that switch flips, getting out isn't easy, but it's the only way to survive. At first, she seemed like the perfect catch. Smart, funny, and always texting me like we were glued together even when we weren't hanging out. It felt like she genuinely cared, and honestly, it was refreshing. But there was this weird thing about her. She was always busy, like really busy. Work, family errands, something always pulling her away. And whenever I asked to meet up in person, she'd come up with these lame excuses about why it couldn't happen. But then whenever she had free time, she would blow up my phone with messages, memes, little good morning texts, random thoughts. Basically nonstop chatter. It was confusing. How could someone be so busy but also so glued to their phone all the time? That's where everything started to feel off. I remember the first time I asked if I could meet her friends. She dodged the idea like it was poison. Not ready yet, she'd say. Or, it's complicated. She never invited me to her place either, always suggesting some random cafe or park, where it was easy for her to come and go without much fuss. I figured maybe she was just private or didn't want to rush things, which I tried to respect. But after a while, it felt less like privacy and more like she was hiding something. You know that feeling when you want to know more about the person you're seeing because it feels serious, but all of you are vague stories and half-truths. That was her. I was so caught up in this weird cycle of wanting to believe her, but knowing deep down something wasn't right. Then there was the burner phone. I didn't notice it at first, but little things caught my attention, like how she'd suddenly drop her phone behind her back if I walked into the room, or how she sometimes switched phones in her purse without explanation. One night, I actually caught a glimpse of the screen on that second phone, and it wasn't just random stuff. There were contacts with names I didn't recognize and messages that looked like they were from another life entirely. My stomach twisted, but I told myself to back off. Maybe she had a job that required extra privacy or something. But the doubts kept piling up like a dark cloud I couldn't shake. One evening, I accidentally left my phone at her place. When I went back to grab it, I noticed her burner phone on the kitchen counter buzzing with texts. I couldn't help myself. I looked at the screen. There were messages from someone calling her mom and others mentioning kids. That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. Ashley wasn't just busy. She had a whole other family I knew nothing about. I felt like I'd been living a lie. My heart pounded, and I wanted to scream, but instead I just froze and dug deeper. I started creeping online, trying to find any hint of who she really was. And I found her. Married, 2 kids, living in a totally different neighborhood. Her social media was filled with family photos, holiday pictures, posts that made it obvious she had a whole life completely separate from the one she shared with me. It was like someone had flipped a switch and showed me a parallel universe where Ashley was a different person, one who didn't want me to see this side of her. I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed sooner. She had been juggling multiple lives, and I was just one small secret piece in a giant, messy puzzle. It got worse. I found out she wasn't just married. She was running other relationships too. The burner phone wasn't for work or privacy. It was for managing different guys she was seeing without any of us knowing. She was like some kind of pro at this, switching between conversations, keeping her stories straight, making sure no one got suspicious. The way she controlled everything was disturbing. I realized she'd been lying about the simplest stuff from day one, creating a whole alternate reality where I was the only guy she cared about. Except I wasn't. I was just another secret she was hiding. It felt like my entire world flipped upside down. How do you trust someone who's been this secretive and manipulative? The Ashley I thought I knew was just a mask. Behind it was someone living a double, triple life, juggling family responsibilities with secret relationships, all without missing a beat. I kept thinking about how many times she lied about where she was or what she was doing. Every excuse, every busy day, it was just smoke and mirrors. When I finally confronted her, it was like talking to a stranger. She was calm, almost bored, like she'd done this 100 times before. No apologies, no explanations, just cold facts that I wasn't the first and definitely wouldn't be the last to fall for the act. It made me feel small and stupid, like I'd been played in the worst way possible. There was no remorse, just this quiet confidence in the fact that she'd gotten away with it again. I left after that, but it wasn't like I could just forget. It haunted me how someone could live such a divided life and keep so many secrets at once. It wasn't just the cheating or the lying, it was the way she made me question reality and everything I thought I knew. I'd never dealt with anything like it before, and honestly, I hope I never do again. Sometimes I wonder how many people she's done this to, how many hearts she's broken while keeping her real life hidden behind a perfect mask. It makes me think about how easily we can be fooled when we want to believe the best in someone. Ashley wasn't just a girl who was busy. She was busy building a complicated web of lies and lives. And I was just one more secret in her phone, one more story that wasn't true. Finding that out, it was one of the most disturbing things I've ever been through. It changed the way I look at trust and love. It made me realize how important it is to pay attention to the little red flags before it's too late. And sometimes, no matter how perfect something seems, the truth is lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to shatter everything you thought was real.